Death of the Outsider is a standalone DLC for Dishonored 2. You play as Billy Lurk, who's sent out on, as the game description says, a quest to pull off the greatest assassination ever. But is the game really that great? Is the assassination really that amazing? Well, not really. To start off, the story is really boring. Billy is not the most exciting protagonist. She's very monotone, dry. There's just no emotion here at all. Dodd makes an appearance as well, but he's the same. They're just so boring, I just can't really get attached to them in the same way that I did Emily or Corvo. And the villains are honestly not that much better either. They're boring, they're lame, there's not a whole lot to them really at all. The characters, the voice acting, everything is just boring. And that's really the problem with Death of the Outsider. Everything about this just feels like a half-assed game. The environments are rehashed for the most part. It feels like you're kind of just wandering around Dishonored 2 again. It doesn't feel like anything new. And then you have the boring characters combined with that, and it makes for a really unrewarding and unsatisfying adventure. And that's really a shame because I loved Dishonored 1 and 2. They were really fun games with really interesting worlds and characters to them. But this game just doesn't have any of that feel to it at all. Now moving on to the gameplay, it's pretty much what you would expect from a Dishonored game. It's the same kind of gameplay where you can play either stealthy or not stealthy, whether you want to be lethal or non-lethal. It's very different in some ways to Dishonored 1 and 2 because playing lethal isn't very penalized in this game. Like if you just kill everybody, it doesn't really change anything. There's no consequence to it. So you can just run around and bash people's heads open if you want, which in some ways kind of cheapens the stealth appeal to the game because there's no real punishment for doing it, but it's also kind of liberating in some ways. So it's kind of weird like that. Now moving on to the abilities and powers in this game, you've got this new teleportation mechanic, because every character of course has one in Dishonored, and it's a little bit different than the other ones, but it's very similar in some ways to Emily's, where you can sort of place it in an area and then you can teleport to it, but you don't have to teleport to it right away in this. So what I mean by that is you can basically plant this little decoy thing that gets stuck in a spot, and then you can choose when you want to go there. So you could run over, pickpocket somebody, or bash somebody over the head, and then decide to just teleport out of there before somebody catches you or something like that. It's kind of interesting in that way and definitely opens up some new ways to play. There's also a kind of interesting ability where you can basically steal somebody else's face and walk around as them to get through guards and stuff like that. And it's a cool and interesting ability, but I do feel like it runs out a little bit too quickly to really get a lot of use out of it. As far as the weapons go, you've got this new charge attack on your sword. You also get mines that you can place that can suck people in, and you run around with different crossbows that can either take people out. You've got a stun ability. Now, I do got to give some props to the level design. It's very similar in many ways to Dishonored 1 and 2, where it's sort of play your own way as they theme it. You know, you can run around different areas and sort of figure out your own play style, really, whether you want to be lethal, non-lethal, go left, go right, and stuff like that. Now, as far as length goes, it's probably about 4 hours if you're really fast in a lethal playthrough, about 6 to 8 hours if you're going to play a kind of slower, more stealthy gameplay. And if you're doing some of the side contents, there's contracts basically that you can do, then you're going to be pushing it more to that 6 to 8 hour range. But this game just really isn't that long at all. Now, as a whole, Death of the Outsider gets a 7 out of 10. It's not that this game's terrible, but it's just not really good either. It's just kind of meh. The story and characters are boring, like I mentioned earlier, but the gameplay is the same fun gameplay from Dishonored 1 and 2. So if that's what you're into, then sure, pick this game up. Just don't expect to really be getting yourself invested in the characters of the world like you did with the first two games.